Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of RISE, and this is our fourth and final informational webinar of the series. Today we'll be talking with Francis Bouchard, and I'll introduce him in just a few minutes. I want to run through, as I do, a couple of housekeeping issues just for a couple of minutes up front here before we get into the discussion. As we move towards the end of the application process, we've had webinars April 4th, 11th, 18th, 25th. This is the last one of our informational webinars. Most important date of all is May 6th at 2 p.m. at the application submission deadline. I would not suggest leaving it to the very last minute, although many do. We really don't have much leeway of going past that deadline at all. So give it some time, and if you run into any problems with the website or submission process, just let us know. We'll be announcing finalists on May 10th, and May 20th will be the deadline for those invited finalists to submit their documentation. And we'll be going through a pitch session, and we'll be announcing final winners in late June of 2024. It's an accelerated schedule, as I've mentioned. We need to have the winners under contract by the end of June. And so we're going to be pushing ahead pretty aggressively after the May 6th deadline. But just to refresh everyone's memory and get everyone on the same page here, just talking about the subject of riverine flooding, it is a nationwide problem, and in fact, even beyond that. We have been focusing here in Virginia, in this southwestern part, but we can see that all up and down the Appalachians is affected by the riverine flooding, as well as down the middle of the country. That's less so mountain, but it's still riverine flooding, and on the west coast there are also regions affected there. We are focused on the 4 regions here of the 4 planning district commissions that we have been discussing. We will be looking very closely at this region down here in the Cumberland Plateau PDC, but we also want to cover Lenawisco, Mount Rogers, and New River. And in fact, solutions that are being developed for our challenge should be applicable all up and down the region in Virginia and even beyond. We know that other states are looking at this and trying to tackle this problem. We want our solutions to be scalable there. To bring this down to detail in Buchanan County, as I showed you, this is the region here in Southwest Virginia. This is the terrain map that goes on top of the very complex mountainous terrain. The mountains are maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet maximum, but when you start to get highly localized heavy rainfall, that tends to give rise to a pretty complex flooding environment. And in fact, back in August 2021 at Hurley, there was a very significant event. Over 7 inches of rain fell there in a very short period, causing extreme damage to the town, to the village. And in Whitewood, less than a year later, 6 inches plus of rain caused similar devastation. These are not wealthy neighborhoods. These is not a wealthy region. Average annual income is about $32,000. In both of these cases, the Commonwealth raised $17 million for Hurley and 18 for Whitewood out of the RGGI Fund, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. That's a lot of money, and it showed up about 15, 16 months after the event. So it was also hard to use effectively. And just to give an example of what causes these floodings, this is a screen grab from a weather broadcast on TV here, which is, you can see the weather forecaster's arm right there in his hand. But it shows the regions of heavy rainfall are very localized in this region. as I mentioned, giving rise to some pretty complicated flooding environments as to which area is going to be affected and how and when. But also it's different. If we look at a large region of those 4 PVCs, it's unlikely that one event will wipe out the whole region. So this may make it more attractive on the insurance side for developing and managing insurance programs. Just one last reminder here of the 3 topic areas that we are looking at that we've discussed in the past few weeks. We're looking at flood resilient and affordable landscape and building adaptations that are affordable for this region and that also can be used to bring down the cost of insuring these buildings, these properties. Typical replacement cost for these buildings is between $30,000 and $50,000. So there's really not a whole lot of headroom here to spend on building adaptations, but we want to try and find what would be possible and affordable and manageable. We're also looking to have developed early warning systems to alert of significant flooding events and provide avoidance guidance in advance as well as after the event. And what we're going to be talking about today is the design, scope, and structure and support and management of a region-wide insurance and support program. So with that, I'd like to introduce, I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'll introduce our guest here today, Francis Bouchard. Good afternoon, Francis. Thank you for joining us. Francis has been an advisor, a catalyst, and a contributor to a series of climate resilience insurance initiatives. He's currently the managing director for climate at Marsh McLennan, and he earlier served as group head of public affairs and sustainability for Zurich Insurance Group. He's been in the insurance sector since 1989 and has held a series of industry-focused advocacy, communication, sales, and citizenship public affairs roles in US and also in Switzerland. Francis also chairs the board of directors of SBP, a national nonprofit focused on disaster resilience and recovery, and is a member of the advisory council of Syracuse University Dynamic Sustainability Lab. He's definitely an expert in the field, and we welcome him joining us. And we want to talk about the concepts and his thoughts on how and what an insurance program in the riverine communities would look like. And Francis, just as a first sort of discussion point, and by the way, everyone, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A page. We'll let me know when they're in there. We'll take them as soon as we can and bring them into this project. But Francis, as you've seen and understand the problem that we're facing here, that we want to try and address. We're looking to have a program to provide insurance to the communities affected by this type of flooding. What are your initial thoughts about general approaches, similar efforts in the past, elsewhere, or along similar lines, and what's worked and what hasn't worked? What are your thoughts on that in a general sense?
Yeah, Paul, thank you, and thank you for not only holding this webinar but sponsoring the whole RISE challenge. I mean, I think it's these type of problems are tough to solve, and it really requires the type of innovative approaches and crowdsourcing almost that you all promote to untangle the various pieces and perhaps look at it in a totally different way. So kudos to you and everything you all are doing to bring new knowledge and new approaches together. In terms of the specific question you asked about, what have I seen? I haven't seen anything exactly like this, right? Which is why kudos again, you guys are doing this. What we have seen, and certainly what we are promoting within Marsh McLennan, Guy Carpenter, and a few other units is a concept that would allow communities to kind of come together and purchase common insurance products, risk management, risk transfer products, in perhaps a more economical fashion. But there are limits to it, Paul. So I don't want to suggest that this is some type of panacea that will resolve all issues. I mean, part of the problem is that you're trying to solve here, I presume, is the fact that my understanding, Paul, please correct me, but neither of the incidents that you cited earlier were declared federal disasters, so you didn't have the entire apparatus, kind of kicking into gear. So there's that whole issue of that threshold and what do states have access to below that threshold, or what do communities have access to. So these are complex ecosystems, but the community-based catastrophe insurance concept that we've been out talking to communities about is essentially a different way to distribute insurance, and it's intended really to complement the existing NFIP or private programs that are out there, but it can be very targeted, right? So in this case, to just hypothetically kind of think through how to apply the CBCI model to these cases, what you could do is you could start to identify individual homeowners in these communities. They're small enough that you could probably literally identify those that are most exposed. You could do that across a number of communities. You could assess what do they really need? Is it full replacement? Is it enough money to actually, when they're told that there's too much rain, there's going to be flooding, to actually fill up the car with gas and drive and to the nearest city where there are hotel rooms and they can have accommodations for a few days before the water goes down. Is it small scale infrastructure, perhaps some bridges or some roads that might get washed out? When you narrow down kind of to the common need across those communities, you could then start to apply various tools. And in the case we typically look at our parametric tools. So you could have a multiple trigger parametric tool. And Paul, I'm not a modeler, and I'm certainly not an expert in parametrics or modeling, but certainly in the discussions we have had with other communities, it would be possible to set both a overarching threshold of rainfall, for example, and then a secondary trigger of local rainfall, right? Because recognizing that in those mountains, you're on one side of the mountain versus the other, it might not be exactly the same, right? So you could certainly develop a community-based catastrophe insurance policy that brought common exposures in multiple communities, and then wrap them in some type of double trigger parametric. I would assume that would then allow communities to know that at least for a particular extreme event that they've defined through the triggers, there'll be financial resources available for this particular, whether it's to go to the homeowners, whether it's to go to, quick fixes to infrastructure, again, whether it's to go to avoidance, get people out. So it really depends on what the communities would decide are the critical exposures that they want to finance, and then kind of getting enough of them together to get the diversification benefit.
So, and again, if anyone has questions, there's so many things to discuss in just what Francis says, but please raise your hands. But just in response to what you said, what do the homeowners need after an event? Well, right after an event, meaning in the hour or hours following, they need food and shelter. They need to stay safe and alive. Then maybe they need $5,000, $10,000 to get gas in the car and find a place to take their family. If their house has been damaged and it's unlivable, they've got to find somewhere to live. And in some of the places in Southwest Virginia, you can be 40 minutes from a city and one road away. So that's difficult. And then maybe 4 months down the road, you need $50,000 to rebuild your building. So there's different levels here. And the immediate level has been taken care of by the United Way in the past. They raised $1 million for each one of these incidences. How would a charity, a philanthropy, be introduced into the sort of the insurance stack here? or is there something different to be done, or is it just as it's currently done?
No, and Paul, you're asking the right question, because the discussions, many of the discussions we have about community-based catastrophe insurance structures do kind of stop at that. How do we finance it? That seems to be a conundrum. And this concept of blended finance, does start to open potential doors. And what I mean by blended finance is simply an amalgam of different financing sources coming together on a common project. So you could see philanthropy playing multiple roles. The program we have up and running in New York is the premiums are paid by a local NGO that is serving low-income populations in New York City who are flood exposed. So they felt it was worthwhile in terms of how to protect their clientele to purchase the insurance product. In this case, what you could see is philanthropy perhaps financing a portion of the premium, or you could see them perhaps stepping in to guarantee certain loans that maybe are part of the broader package, or provide some type of catalytic financing. So it's not just. I'll give you another example where this could work, and maybe philanthropy would have a role too. As if not so much on the short term, but you said the longer term needs, and NFIP is the one that should be providing that, but it's probably not being purchased at a sufficient level. One thing you can do with this CBCI policy is actually fund a deductible buy down, right? So the way the NFIP works is, if you want a small deductible, you pay high. If you want a $10,000 deductible, you pay much less. So you may be able to finance that deductible, which makes that NFIP policy actually affordable, Paul. And that would be an example where you might have a charity really interested in that, because what they're doing, what that structure would then do is actually facilitate people taking their own steps to protect their financial wherewithal through an NFIP policy, which is just dramatically cheaper than it would be otherwise. So I think philanthropies are looking for more the catalytic role, where they're helping others achieve more than they would have otherwise, as opposed to simply coming in and paying the premium.
So that's very interesting. It's an interesting way to look at it. We have a question in the Q&A. Is the idea to use the grant to have a CBCI policy ready for inception upon completion of the grant, with a blended financing plan confirmed and underwriting completed? The answer is no to that. This is about a one-year pilot. We are looking to have the program designed. Then we have to figure out who the beneficiaries are and who is paying, what the costs are, and who's paying the costs. And so the expectation is not to have the whole program up and ready for market in that short of a time. We just need to get a handle on. I mean, we know how much the state has already ponied up for these two previous events, but what would it cost to ensure that whole region? I certainly don't know, and I don't know that I would ask anyone at this point what that would be. So to go on with along a similar vein, and also what you were talking about, Francis, who would you see in a general sense, who needs to be at the table here from the government perspective? I'm not asking you to go through the alphabet soup of Virginia politics, but what types of agencies should be at the table having a say in this?
Well, clearly the response and recovery function, they take different terms, and I don't know if Virginia has done this, but I know North Carolina has an office now, a cabinet level office of resilience and recovery, right? So if Virginia has organized itself similarly, that would be the place to start, I think. Clearly, this has a lot to do with water management infrastructure that's in place as well. So clearly, the agencies that are out there managing, water at the state level and probably at the county level are going to be critical there as well. And then I think you'll have kind of the interfaces with NFIP and some of the federal infrastructures, whether it's the regional FEMA or the regional NFIP liaisons, and because particularly if you were to create, and Paul, I'm not choosing this or that, but if you were to focus on kind of a NFIP deductible buy down, I mean, there may be other benefits. So, there's something called the community rating system, and the more you prepare the community, the cheaper it gets, the NFIP coverage gets. So you may be able to make the case that by buying down the deductible, more people will be insured, and then you get even more benefit, right? So you'd want to tap into all of the federal, state, and regional, if not local, entities that are also trying to incentivize responsible pre-event resilience, and make sure that those entities are aligned. So I don't know enough, Paul, about Virginia politics, particularly at a local level, particularly down in the South. I used to live up in Northern Virginia, but it's a different world up there. So nothing I learned there would be applicable. But really the emergency preparedness folks, everyone involved in the resilience preparation and recovery, and then the physical infrastructure for sure.
What do you think, Francis, about a role for the insurers and reinsurers? Is there an interest or an appetite there to be a part of this whole process?
Again, I think if a risk transfer product were developed that delivered on a high value need at these communities and could be priced appropriately, recognizing that maybe there's a blended finance mechanism to catalyze funding from somewhere else. I mean, I think there's a lot of interest in being part of the solution. Now, will they go out and kind of be the ones in the community? I don't think so, Paul. I think it's organizations like yours and efforts like the challenges that you guys are assembling that I think will be more successful in bringing these ideas to the insurance and reinsurance community. Because I don't think that I don't think that's the market that they're spending time, trying to create. You look at the challenges of the cyber market and some of the higher level catastrophe issues, and those are demanding, immense amounts of intellectual energy and computation time or whatnot. So I think they need to be drawn to these as opposed to them kind of organically focusing on them. But that's my own observation. I could be wrong.
Okay. We have a question in the Q&A. Will the counties have ongoing resources to manage all the tools from the warning systems to insurance management? Also, will this serve as a template for other locations across the country? So the first question, we don't know what those ongoing resources are, but we know that there is not adequate information pre and immediately post events for the emergency management services. We know that they're lacking in that. That was part of Jessica's discussion a couple of weeks ago, and we hope that this will serve as a template for other locations across the country. I mean, we just don't want to solve our own problem, and we want other locations, other locales looking over our shoulder here, taking advantage of what we're doing.
And Paul, Appalachia is not unique, right, in terms of its topographical exposure. Can I cite an example of a program that was assembled actually in the Philippines, not in the United States, but it's relevant here because it directly connects the early warning technologies and mechanics with very novel insurance application. So what this company did is for a few years they had a microinsurance program for flooding, and pretty typical microinsurance program. But then what they did is they switched it to essentially a pre-event risk mitigation program. And the way they did that is they told the people in those communities that the early warning mechanisms will now be a triggering mechanism. So essentially they've moved from the concept of insurance to anticipatory finance, right? So this is now trying to put money in people's hands before the event hits, right? So in this case, it was so that they could take their cattle or take their essentially their livelihoods and move them up ground, right? Up the hill and protect them from damage or loss, because that is their entire economic well-being are these materials. So there is intriguing connections between early warning and anticipatory finance that shows that when there's money associated with the early warning, people actually pay more attention to their early warning, right? And that's what the findings in the Philippines have been. So you know, I think we're going to miss a trick here if we don't actually try to tie these together somehow. And hey, you get the early warning, and with the early warning, maybe then you get that immediate need, right? That immediate, okay, money to get the hell out of Dodge and find a hotel room. Maybe those things can be connected, and then you have a parallel or similar attached program that's really about a deductible buy down, so that the home is then repaired under under NFIP. So Paul, you know, just thinking here out loud, there could be interesting ways to put pieces of the puzzle together that really haven't been done before. Not in the US.
And we're also we've had some discussions. The building adaptation piece of the challenge, where we're looking to potentially dry proof, for example, a home. Now that's only for like the first 1 to 3 feet of flooding. I mean, you're going to do so much, but maybe that makes it just that little bit cheaper to insure the whole region if more homes have done that. And so it all does seem to be connected, this risk mitigation and risk transfer, and we want to make that.
They're all connected. I mean, the more the risk, the harder it is to transfer, right? The more the residual risk, if you can manage it down and there's residual risk, you can probably find a market for it. So yeah, they're directly related. And Paul, in terms of the point about, you know, will this be a model for other parts of the country? I really, really hope so, because you know, we're in this, I feel like we're in this endless cycle of pilots, and that's great because you learn things, but we got to get into scale mode, right? We've got to really figure out what are the best ideas and find ways to scale them. So again, kudos to you all for being part of that exercise.
Well, and we're at time, but thank you so much, Francis. We really appreciate your time and your expertise and your help and guidance in this whole discussion. It's been very, very helpful. I'm sure it has for the attendees on the call here. And everyone, remember, May 6th, 2 p.m. is the witching hour. So we'll look forward to your submissions. If anyone has any questions or needs some help, contact us as soon as possible. But again, I just want to thank Francis for your time, and thank everybody for being on this call. Thank you.